Welcome to Will's Personal Development Podcast, where we bring you data and science-backed answers and advice from billionaires. What's up, everyone? This is Will Chow, and this is Will's Personal Development Podcast show. I'm coming at you live through the power of the internet, and let's just get started with the topic of this podcast. This is going to be a very impactful episode. In fact, it might be one of the most useful podcast episodes on the entire website. If you want an archive of all my blog posts and podcast episodes, go to willyoulaugh.com. And yet this one might be one of the best because I'm going to be covering a topic that has been requested. My email subscribers are given top priority, and I've asked them what they want me to talk about, and I got a request for career advice, getting a job, your first job interview tips, stuff around being a young professional in the real world and really excelling in that field. So I have so much to say about this topic because I've studied it intensely, learned from the top career experts online, and this was a very dark, tough time for me when I had to go through it. It was very long. It took years of trial and error to really figure things out. There's a point where I was very desperate for any job, and there was also a time where I wanted to just take anything I could get. And then there's other times where other issues were at play where I just didn't know how to negotiate for salary or interview, and people were there to help me. And then there's other times when I took Udemy courses and other stuff around this and, got coached by these career experts, and yet the results weren't there. So I just kind of want to go through what worked and what didn't for me as a real person who's recently experienced this, so know how it's like in the modern world. And that's also a huge thing. A lot of these books that were bestsellers, they were written with all these traditional tips before the internet was here and LinkedIn was here. And those things change everything. And they'll try and cover it up a bit, and they'll be like, oh, well, don't you know, this actually helps, in the real world, or they'll update their existing book. There's a few big books around these topics, like What Color Is Your Parachute is one of them. And they'll do a revised and expanded new edition for, internet age. Yet the problem is you'll read these things and you can tell it was still kind of antiquated. It was just kind of oh, this is how you do it in the old world, and this is how we assume you do it in the real world. So it was still kind of written by and for people who are 50 years old, trying to talk down to young millennials, and it just kind of doesn't work all the time. So I just kind of want to give you the truth behind all this and at least spread some knowledge, because this was a very tough time for me. And there's a lot of questions around interviewing and getting that job that I think I can help answer. So yeah, by the way, if you want to join the discussion and you want to be one of those VIP email subscribers and send in your question, you can easily do that. It's free to join my newsletter. If you go to my site, willyoulaugh.com, willyoulaugh.com, there's all these opt-in forms where you can enter your email, and they'll put you into my newsletter, and it's free, and then you're a VIP email newsletter. And then each time I send out an email, you can reply to that email and I'll read them. I read every email. So let's just get on to the tips. The first thing that you have to realize is that online job boards are black holes. If you don't know this, you will find out very soon. They're useless. Avoid them. They're not going to help you 99% of the time. It's just a complete waste of time to even post on there. You can spend weeks for 2 hours a day just applying to these job boards and get no response. Even if you have a really killer resume and application and you're really good at what you do and you even graduated from Harvard. And let me explain to you why. If you don't believe me, test it out, because I have. It's not only the most useless thing to do, it's also the most discouraging psychologically, because you just get more desperate and discouraged when you see when you send out 1,000 applications and you get no response. So why does this occur in the first place? Think about it. Think for a second or a minute. What do you think the answer is before I tell you? It's very simple. It's because it's so dead simple for anyone on the entire internet to apply. Some of these job boards have made it even crazier, like ZipRecruiter. They made it even crazier by installing a one-click apply button. Now, you might think, oh, this is perfect for me. I'm lazy. I don't want to do this. And I could just hit one button and I'm done. And I've applied for the job. And boom, I'm going to get this really cool job I found posted very soon. The problem with this is that because it's so dead simple, you're competing with thousands of people who applied, sometimes tens of thousands. If it's a big company, like a well-known company like Under Armour or Nike or, Klondike or something that's a big brand, or even a mid-sized brand, tens of thousands of applications, more applications than they have in their lifetime the ability to go through. So what do you think this means in the new job digital age when you have all these people applying, sometimes from all over the world, from India, from all these different places for these jobs, and maybe even half the resumes or most of them are complete garbage, but you still have this thick file of 10,000 or 1,000 resumes to get through. It's impossible. You can't actually physically go through all those. If you do, it causes the psychology and the way you treat each application to drastically change. When there's such a large supply, and that's what happens with the internet, with these like one-click application buttons, you get a phenomenon where the people get more picky and they spend very little time with each application. So keep that in mind and ask yourself, how are you going to stand out? How are you going to present yourself when you are only given 2 seconds of time before someone moves on to the next resume in the pile? Think about that for a second. So that leads me to my next big tip for you, which is that you shouldn't have a resume that is longer than 1 page. Now, this may seem counterintuitive because when I started out, I didn't know any of these rules. So I broke all of them, and I thought this was what was wanted of me because that's what my mom told me, or my parent, or some career counselor, and surely they must know right? So I originally had a resume that my mom helped me create, and her resume is like 10 pages herself with every single credential under the sun. And that's supposedly what you want, right? So I tried to duplicate something similar, and I had this 6-page resume with all these awards and clubs I was a part of, all the way back to high school. I was part of 15 to 20 different clubs in high school, put all that stuff in there and some of my achievements. And the issue with that is you are just going to overwhelm them. Let's say you have all this crap from all these years back. The problem is they only have a few seconds. And if you overwhelm them with 100 bullets and 4 pages, they're just they don't know what to highlight or focus on. So they'll just kind of skim through the whole thing and see a few points on there. And most of the stuff that they're going to see is not going to be that great. They're only looking for the stuff that really shoots out at them. So on top of that, a lot of stuff will be irrelevant or not as relevant as possible to the job that you're applying to. Think of it this way. Sure, it's great that you showed initiative and you're part of these volunteering organizations and you practiced piano in school and you competed and all this other stuff. But that's what you did in high school. That was years ago. And you're applying for, let's say, a marketing job. They want to see marketing experience, any level of related marketing chops you have. Maybe it's marketing books you've read, marketing projects you have done online, and so on and so forth. So basically, my tip for you is cut the resume to 1 page. Cut the fat. Only keep the stuff that's really going to stand out. Why? Because if you do not, the stuff that will really stand out will be lost and go unnoticed in the sea of somewhat useful, somewhat interesting bullet points that's going to flood your resume. Keep it to 1 page because that really forces you to cut the fat and really choose the things that are really going to stick out and make the person who's reading your application to go, wow. It's also going to force them to read it because there's nothing else on the page to distract them. Now, how do you choose these things that stand out? Of course, you want to be a bit more selective and choosy with your stuff. And you want to focus on things that are relevant to the job at hand. If you have to choose between maybe some leadership award that's impressive but not related to marketing, maybe it's like a cheerleading volunteer award you got versus something related to marketing, like, hey, I did this internship for free on the side. I helped this mom and pop cookie store through online marketing grow their revenue by 676% using SEO, blah, blah, blah. That is going to stick out because it's more relevant to the job you're applying to and it's a good achievement. Now, what if you don't have any achievements? Well, first off, you've been just screwing around. What have you been doing as a student? But, I understand that is the case. Not every student is super ambitious or has everything handed to them on a plate. In certain ways, like I had a tough time getting internships in my freshman and sophomore year because it's not something that most people want. They want a junior or senior because those are the people who are just out of school. But you can always find an internship if you're looking for one and if you hustle hard enough. I had internships in high school, and if you're willing to give and volunteer. So keep that in mind, and I think that is the answer, really. You have to go out there and volunteer your time for free. You can self-teach yourself online and develop those skills. There's so many resources. Udemy, YouTube, there's hundreds, if not thousands of videos. There's lynda.com. Then there's personalized courses you can buy from specific experts online. Then once you've self-taught yourself or learned, or even before, you can go to someone and offer to give value for your free time. Now, I'm going to acknowledge the fact that it's not always easy to get this experience, these achievements, because sometimes these people aren't always willing to accept someone for free. Now, you can be like, why? How can free be so hard nowadays? Well, it's mainly because oftentimes free is not free anymore. You have to realize that if you're offering to intern or volunteer for someone, they have to dedicate extra time and resources to train you and get you up to speed and make sure you're a good fit for the team and so on and so forth. So it's not truly free for them. So I recommend when you're doing an internship or volunteering pitch, really go out there and make sure you can set the table and minimize or reduce all the things that they're scared of so that it truly is free and it's most win-win. You can be like, okay, I know you're not going to pay me, which is great. That makes it awesome for you. But I know you're still going to have to dedicate some time away. So here's how I'm going to make it so that you don't have to, waste extra hours doing this so that it's truly a win-win situation. If you take me as your intern, I will on day one already have the site set up for you and coded properly. And then, these 3 videos done from my video production, and I'll have these uploaded. And as you can see, I've already demonstrated this from my past project enough to show you that you don't have to put in any extra work to teach me any of this because I already self-taught it, and I'm demonstrating that I can get this done and hooked up on your site without any extra effort on your part. So what you're basically doing here is giving undeniable proof that you have the marketing chops or the whatever chops, depending on what industry you're looking for to get into, to have something set up already so that there's less investment on their part. And there's all sorts of other ways you can do this. Some people who are looking for interns, they love teaching others, and that's what they're looking for. They really just want someone who is smart and honest and hardworking, and some of them love getting their ego stroked by someone who's deeply interested in a topic. So you can kind of get a sense for what that person is and then appeal to their interests. And maybe if this guy really just loves getting their ego stroked, you could be like, okay, I'm really passionate about this topic. As you can tell, I love talking about this. And you can go into that sphere of this, and they may want to take you on. So there's a lot of different ways to get interns. Don't let internships, and don't let some excuse hold you back from even trying or starting. I could talk about internships for a long time, but there's more to cover. So the last tip on internships I want to give, or volunteering, is that networking is a huge part of it. You can do this in person. Use meetup.com to find events that are related to the industries you want to go to, and that's one way to meet people in person. Or another way would be through LinkedIn. LinkedIn is huge nowadays. It's probably the new career pathway for succeeding online professionally from a networking standpoint, and just as a way of really finding jobs or internships or volunteering experiences. I'm going to break down exactly how you can use LinkedIn to succeed, because most people have no idea. Like they approach it horribly. But as far as the internship thing goes, real quick on LinkedIn, what I suggest you do is, just like with approaching people in person, with using real life networking events, always come first with, what can I help this other person do? With no strings attached, not trying to get something back from them, and really just trying to make it a win-win and serve them as much as possible. And most importantly, that also means avoiding any sort of neediness or starting off or even mentioning, what can you give me? If you go up to someone at a networking event or on LinkedIn, and the first thing you say, or anywhere in your first pitch or your first conversation, is something about like, hey, can you get me a job? Or hey, can you do this? That can come across incredibly value sucking, like a leech. It's a turn off. No one wants to just, be around people who are constantly asking for stuff, and you're not going to get very far. I've been to many recruiting themed, job board, job event fairs, and those are the places where it's the most rampant. Everyone there is just constantly looking for a job. And when you talk to people, when you meet them and you introduce yourself, that's the first thing or second thing that comes out of their mouth. Hey, I'm looking for a job. Can you help me find a job? And they'll try and make it slightly more, pleasant, but that's still the theme of what they're trying to say to me. And after hearing it for like the fourth or fifth time, it just becomes a real downturn. It's like, okay, everyone's just looking for something. They don't care about you. They're not trying to spread value or positivity to you. So you can flip the script by being the one person there who really is like helping other people, being a positive light, and you'll stand out like a sore thumb, and you'll start getting people interested. I think the big problem with most people is that because they're in this like value sucking, leech sucking state, which is their natural state, and they're looking to almost like leave you for dead, and they don't care if they ever see you again, and what they said to you, doesn't leave a good taste in your mouth, and it makes you just another one of the general public, because everyone's doing this. You don't stand out. And if you do stand out, it's not for a good reason. So that's that. For networking events as a whole, I recommend going to ones that aren't recruiting or job fair focused. if the word was recruiting or job fair or recruiters or jobs is in the title of the event itself, I recommend that you still go to the event, but put it near the bottom of your list. If you have a choice, go to the ones that are more just like professional development themed, like ones that are like, young professional entrepreneur group or something like that, rather than job fair event. The reason is because the latter is going to be filled with the value leeches. It just seems to be a natural trend that I find. Other career experts have mentioned similar things. It just, by the name of it, it attracts the people who are desperate to find a job and are only there to talk to you to find a job, and therefore you get all these value leeches. So just keep that in mind. It's about social intelligence, and by doing this, again, Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this a lot too. By delivering value first with no strings or expectations attached, you create a lot of goodwill in the marketplace, and you open yourself up more to networking and job opportunities. People give you a bit more of a chance. Now, networking in and of itself is like a topic I could talk about for hours. I am not an expert at this, but I have done a good deal of it and just tested it out. It's not one of my strengths; it's one of my weaknesses. But I have found quite a few learning life lessons about it. One of them being that you just naturally, at the end of the day, you naturally will just come across some person eventually that just isn't nice, doesn't want to talk to you, ignores you for some reason or other. And unfortunately, that's how the world is, and you just gonna have to not take it personally and focus on the people who do like you. And as long as you have good values and you're not being a dick to anyone, and there's no real legitimate reason why someone should hate you, then, not a big deal. So just keep that in mind if you ever get into networking and you're shy or you're introverted. That may come up. So now let's go back into really the meat of this podcast episode, which is getting a good job. So it's a tough market out there, and I had a tough time, really tough time. I mean, I got very discouraged. Months went by, and, a lot of the professional books were not helping. So I tried courses. I took courses. I took Ramit's Dream Job course, which was over $1,000. I wrote a in-depth article review on that course on my site, youre.com. If you just go into the search bar and search it, you'll find it. Otherwise, I think the URL for this, don't quote me on this, but I think it's willyoulaugh.com/Ramit. No, it's willyoulaugh.com/dream-job-course. But I could be wrong. Just go to my site, willyoulaugh.com, and search Ramit's Dream Job course. If you care at all on my review on this ridiculously expensive course on finding your dream job. But I got a lot of good tips from that course, and I found that it's truly a systematic and thorough process from beginning to end. It's just not a couple steps. It goes from everything from really seeing what's out in the marketplace to really finding out what it's truly like, what you're missing, what people actually do care about when they're hiring, and then going through the hiring motions, the networking motions, getting the job, negotiating the salary, and then finally, performing really well on your first 100 days of that job. So it's this whole lifestyle process. And what I want to cover really is truly making an impact to get your application truly considered and getting to that first phone interview. That's probably one of the biggest hurdles. Getting to the first phone interview is one of the biggest things, the biggest hangups, toughest hangups. But from there, like the rest is oftentimes more smooth sailing. So how exactly do you get to that first phone interview? Well, you have to actually get your application considered and seen and actually thoughtfully considered by the person reviewing these applications. So what do you do if you're avoiding job boards? What else can you do to apply to jobs? I've already hinted at LinkedIn, but I think more than LinkedIn, the first way I recommend is to go to the specific job sites themselves. So sure, you can start at a job board like Indeed.com or Career Builder, and you can see what they're listing there. And from there, you can maybe get ideas about job titles or companies that are hiring right now for those job titles. That's a great indication. But from there, you go to the company site. If you see something on Indeed.com that says, I'm looking for a technical programmer for Nike.com, go to Nike.com and their job career section and apply there rather than applying on Indeed, even if Indeed has a one-click apply button. The reason is because of many things. One, you're going to get much more updated job listings on the actual site. Two, you'll get read more. Three, there's less of a filter and you'll probably be put into a better pile. Keep in mind that the job board listings often demand a premium price for these recruiters to pay to post their jobs. And on top of that, they get this massive list back, most of which are horrible applicants who have horrible resumes and very few achievements or good characteristic traits. So you have a premium and a higher chance because you're in a higher quality pile and you've indicated that you actually went to that person's site and applied. So that's huge in and of itself. Now, the next tip I have for you is really make sure that you don't make any simple mistakes in your application. This may seem stupid simple, but you would be surprised. Chances are, I don't care how smart you are, what school you went to, most people have the most simple mistakes on their applications all over the place because they didn't proofread, they didn't put it through a spelling and grammar check, they didn't use a free tool like Grammarly to really check the grammar and spelling and punctuation, and all sorts of other errors. The cover letter is addressing the wrong person or the wrong company. The cover letter is too generic and it's clear that it's like copied and pasted and it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Really fix that up. You'll be surprised how many applicants in the first line or first paragraph, there's like 3 typos. And it's not because they're a bad writer. It's because they put less initiative and effort into this as opposed to something like an essay that they would write. And because of that, it wasn't proofread properly. And there's all these spelling errors in it and it just looks disgusting. So keep that in mind. I've now been on both sides of the hiring table quite often. I've been the guy who's been interviewed a lot, and I've also been the guy who has interviewed other people a decent number of times and helped make hiring decisions. And so I've seen this. I've seen how people digitally apply, and sometimes it is just downright disgusting. A large chunk of them will just have horrific errors and issues. And when applicants see that, when someone reviewing the application pile sees that, you're immediately cut. And they're harsh because, first off, it's just such a simple mistake that anyone who put even a decent extra amount of time in, just like a small amount of time in, shouldn't have made it. So that just it's a smack in the face to them towards the level of commitment you have. So it can be offensive. And then the second thing is the fact that they can be this picky and they must be this picky because they're in the internet age where they're dealing with thousands of applications. Another thing I recommend is if you can, if you prefer it, or if you have no preference, apply to smaller and mid-sized companies. The exception is if you prefer working at a larger company, but smaller mid-sized companies, especially for a first job, like when you have less flexibility to choose what you want to do because you have no credentials or skills to or less skills. I wouldn't say no credentials or skills, but less skills to like leverage. Smaller to mid-sized companies just do better because you have less people competing for the position and applying, and you're more likely to be seen. Rather than 1,000 applicants, you may be dealing with 100. Rather than 500 applications on the company's website, you're dealing with 30. So that really cuts down the numbers, especially if it's a small company that's like less than 50 employees, and you have the choice of applying through Indeed.com or through their actual website, that company's website. Definitely apply through the company's website. You will stick out like a sore thumb. You will be one of like 5 people who applied through the website. Their ears and eyes may perk up. Now, just applying alone is not enough. So let me just give you some extra tips that I think will really take it to the next level. I call this tip consistent, persistent personalization. That's just a fancy term I made up, CPP. And all it really means, in simple words, is you want to really show that you've chosen this specific company and it's a great fit for you, and you're going to show how you can stand out in any way possible, even if it means spending an extra $20 or $30 to do so. Now, of course, to do this, you actually have to personalize and choose a handful of companies, maybe your top 5 or 10 that you think are reachable to do this. So make sure you choose those companies and actually personalize. Most people, what they're doing is they are shotgunning. They're copying and pasting applications and resumes and just blasting them out to 1,000 or 100 different companies that they're mildly interested in. All the cover letters look generic. All the applications look generic and cookie cutter. And the problem with being a jack of all trades is that you're a master of none, and that's what's going to happen. None of the applications are going to look that great because you didn't personalize them for any company specifically. So they're just going to be so lukewarm because you're trying to spam them and you're not going to get anywhere. Sometimes it's better to just kind of focus and actually take some extra time to personalize some of these applications. So what does this look like in practice? Well, first and foremost, I go on LinkedIn and I decide the top 5, 10, 15, or 20 companies that I really want to personalize my message to, and that I have a decent shot at competing for. So what you can do on LinkedIn, at the big search bar feature at the top, once you have an account on there, is you can go into that search bar feature, and there's like an advanced filter for companies, and you can go to that filter and then start sorting companies by what you want. So you can sort companies by size, and they'll filter anything from like 10,000 employees down to like 10 employees. So there's some pretty good detailed filtering in there. You can sort companies by industry, and there's all sorts of cool industries that you never would have thought to look into, like the travel and hospitality industry. And that's another way to kind of really, segment and consider, what type of jobs did I never consider that I might be passionate about? And you can also sort by all sorts of other stuff, like job title. Maybe you want a sales position. Maybe you want a receptionist position. Maybe you want to be an advertiser. Maybe you want to be a product manager. And you can sort by all these different things until you find like these top 20 companies that you think you would be a great choice for you, that you would enjoy working at, and that you have a decent shot of going towards. From there, you write personalized cover letters for each of these. You may even want to personalize your resume for each of them too. Now, for these, you don't have to go overboard, but it's mainly about really showcasing that, hey, I didn't just write this resume for some random person. I wrote this specifically for you. I really want to work here. And you called out specific things to show that you've actually researched that website, that you've actually researched this company and you know what it's about. And this is a place where a little extra effort goes a long way. It is disappointing, severely disappointing, how 99% of applicants, when they're asked about the company that they're being interviewed for, they know close to nothing. They may know a few sentences or tips or stuff that they clearly just pulled off the website homepage, doing 10 seconds of research right before the interview, but that's it. And it's so clear and obvious. I've seen it firsthand numerous times as an interviewer, and it's disappointing when no one has spent much time to really showcase the website. And that's very common for anything that's mid to low, small size. Obviously, if we're talking like one of the top companies in the world, like Google or Facebook, it might be different. Maybe they'll know what the company is. But even then, it's like, okay, you know the mainstream concepts about what this company is in your own life experience using the tool Google or Facebook. But it's still clear that you didn't bother to spend an extra 2 minutes or 5 minutes to really find some cool facts about this company, about the people who are interviewing you, and so on and so forth. And that can be discouraging and disappointing when you're asked about that in the interview or when someone reads your cover letter. So it doesn't have to be crazy, but it can just be something like, in your first paragraph of your cover letter, you just address like, I really love this company because I was looking at your culture page and I noticed that you really focus on the values of freedom, openness, and courage. And these are qualities that I admire. You go into a short story about how courage was something that helped you save your dog from getting hit by a car. And then you go into another paragraph about, hey, I also noticed how with your work, you really emphasize the technical aspects of the job, whereas most other companies don't. I really like that, blah, blah, blah. It really just shows that you actually spent a decent amount of time. So I've ranted on this topic long enough. Let's move on to the next step. So you have this good cover letter, you send it in, and you send the application in. It doesn't stop there. That's just where you begin. Here's where it really gets interesting. You know how I mentioned just spending an extra $20 or $30 to get ahead? Send in some roses, a box of chocolates, something to their physical address, with the note that it came from you. That $20 or $30 could potentially get you the deal. A salary that's $50,000 or $70,000. It could get you that job. It could make or break something. It may not. It may just be another stepping stone in the equation. But no one does this. I hear about it all the time. I hear about a lot of tactics that no one does. Like you'd be like surprised. Like especially the smaller the company gets, no one bothers to do them. Everyone who floods in just goes through the normal standard application route, and it's boring. And that's the crazy thing about this. When I first heard about like Facebook micro targeting hacks, some people said, "Oh, everyone's doing that already. There's no point in doing that." But in reality, no one was doing this. I had never seen anyone do this, and at companies I've worked at, no one's ever done that. People have done it on the planet Earth, but the frequency and abundance of people who take that extra step is very few. So there's numerous ways to really show extra personalization and persistence in a non-threatening, non-annoying way. And the key is to actually execute on this. And as I demonstrated, you don't have to spend massive amounts of money to do this. And the second key would be to do this once a week for a few months, a couple months. Probably by the first month, you're going to hear something back. But otherwise, you keep going for like 2 months, 3 months. You never know where you're going to get. So you can string a bunch of these tactics together. Maybe you send some roses. You deliver them in person, maybe. Companies list their physical address on the website. Next, you might do some Facebook or LinkedIn micro-targeting. It's actually fairly dead simple nowadays. If you read an article online on how to do it, it's done. And basically, you just target very specific people, and you're only paying like 50 cents a day to do it because your audience size is so small. Basically, just set it up to target people who have X job title working at X company. And then you just set up the video ad or your image ad and say, hey, this is me. I really want to work here. And, put a little bit of thought into it. Don't make it some cringy video or something stupid. I think the biggest issue is just laziness. People are so averse to laziness. And I'm a hypocrite to this. I've done this in the past too. We're so scared of anything that involves work that our laziness makes us do even more work than what we originally were scared of running away from in a less effective manner. A great example would be someone who doesn't want to figure out how to do a LinkedIn micro-targeting ad campaign. So instead of taking the 2 hours to learn how to do that and set it up, they spend the next 20 hours frustratedly spamming people on Indeed.com or some job board and getting no results and no one responding to their applications. So flowers, chocolates, and LinkedIn are just a few options. There's many other ways. You can actually it could be as simple as calling in once a week or once every 2 weeks, just saying who you are and being very polite and kind and saying, hey, I applied 2 weeks ago and I want to be very polite about this. I'm not just here to harass you and ask you if you've seen my application like everyone else does. I actually want to, learn if you have rejected me already, why I was rejected and what I could do better and what I'm missing to maybe get the job next time. So, you're not just being that person who's like, hey, have you reviewed my application yet? And being that annoying prick, you're asking something in a non-resentful, polite way where you're actually interested in self-growth and self-learning. And when you actually get those results back, you don't just, fume about them and get angry. You actually take those results and actually learn what you're missing. Maybe you're like, oh, that's very thoughtful that you actually took the time to call and ask me this. You know what? The only thing you were missing were a bit more social skills and some technical experience in C++. And you could be like, great, okay. For the next month, you join some Toastmasters classes. You practice your social skills a bit more. You volunteer at an animal shelter and you learn C++ on the side using codeacademy.com. You come back to them after a month, you showcase all you've done, and they see that initiative and they hire you on the spot. That's not out of the ordinary, stuff that have been done before. So keep that in mind. It's possible to push your way to the front and do this in a non-threatening way. Obviously, you have to gauge it from company to company. If you are just completely unqualified and they tell you that and they're just like, stop calling us, we don't want you, then maybe just back off because now you're being annoying rather than persistent. But maybe at this other company, you get a response back and you're like, man, it was a very tough decision. We had all these good candidates and limited spots and we're about to choose you, but someone else just barely came up on top. If you come back and keep applying, we're very busy, so we might miss you. So keep reminding us, you might make it next time. Then of course, be persistent. Go that extra mile to send, a box of chocolates and then some flowers. Stop into their office for real one day. Maybe hand deliver a demonstration project of your work, personalized for that company. These are things that can really help you. And of course, companies will not always explicitly be so detailed and obvious in telling you whether or not you're being persistent or annoying. But you have to use your gut instinct. Sometimes they'll just be very warm and friendly, and you can tell that they have a lot of applications they're dealing with, and they're just looking for that one person who's going to do a little extra to stick out. And they won't tell you anything in person. They'll be like, we'll get back to you about whether you made it to the next stage after the phone interview. And then after the phone interview, you don't hear anything. Take that initiative. Do what you need to do. And don't always wait for them. Right after the phone interview, most people will do nothing. Some will send a pretty boring thank you letter email. Think about what you can do that will take just a little extra effort but can go far way. Maybe it's a handwritten postcard thank you letter. Maybe it's like a video postcard letter. Maybe they mentioned like, oh, it would have been so great if you had come to this in-person interview with an actual project that you had done. Too bad you were like everyone else and you just came by yourself. Right after the interview, actually create a project, like a programming project or web design project, whatever you're applying for, and showcase to that person via email right after the interview or whenever you get it done. There's many ways of sticking out and doing more and showing that you have more initiative, and more than initiative, showing that you have evidence of hustle, of evidence of actually demonstrating the value and skills that you've done and giving some of that value. Deliverables and projects are a great way of doing that, no matter what job you're applying for, whether it's a PR job, marketing job, or a developer or design job. These are all things that you can create some level of deliverable product beforehand, personalized to that company or interviewer. And no one does this. That's why you'll stand out like a sore thumb if you do, in a good way. No one is willing to spend, a couple extra hours to get a job that can, pay them all that extra money. Why wouldn't you be willing to spend a few extra hours that could make or break you getting a job that pays $75,000, $100,000 per year, or maybe even just $50,000 or $25,000 per year? It's better than sitting on your mom's couch for another 2 months not getting paid. You just made a bunch of money there by a little extra effort. So what exactly does this mean, a deliverable? Like, let's say you're a designer, a web designer. You can come to the interview like everyone else with a stack of resumes or like some portfolio paper and stuff like that. Or maybe even some writing samples or design samples or a link to your Instagram or some portfolio thing that you have online. That's good and all, and definitely do that. But don't think that's going to make you stand out because everyone else is doing that. What else could you do? Well, if you're a designer, for instance, that company is there because they want designs made for their site. Maybe it's a logo. Maybe it is a specific brochure. Make it for them. Without being asked, make that for them and present it in your interview. And say, hey, I made this personalized specifically for your company. Here's your logo. You see how these birds are flying out. I know that birds are a key part of your image. I made these animated birds fly out of your logo as, my free gift to you. Not only as a gift, but also to demonstrate my skill. Boom, you're going to have major brownie points. I have seen that win over job titles for people who were rejected first, but then came back the next year. So this stuff does work. And I want to emphasize that it's not about gifts or manipulation and so on and so forth. To really maximize the strategy, you really have to have the fundamental foundation pillars of actual skill at what you're doing. If you're underqualified, this fluffy stuff of sending roses and chocolates is nothing more than icing on a cake. And without the actual cake, icing on its own doesn't make for a full package. So keep that in mind. If you're a programmer, make sure you actually know how to program well. And it doesn't work if you're arrogant and you think you can program well, but you can't. Or vice versa, where you think, you have low self-esteem and you're really good, but you think you're bad, and it debilitates you from even applying. So how do you actually find the truth about where you're at? And I think this is probably the biggest thing. And this is the final tip I'll leave you guys with. Reach out to people on LinkedIn or in person. But what you want to do is get, at least 5 people in the industry or around the job title you're interested in. It doesn't have to be the exact job title. Maybe it's the manager of the guy that has your job, or someone who's been in the industry and knows and understands your job. And so essentially, to put it simply, you reach out to these people with a similar win-win, positive vibe type of message on LinkedIn. You ask to connect with them, and then once they accept your connection, you can message them for free. That's the free way of doing it. The paid way is you can pay for a premium LinkedIn account and pay to message people who you aren't connected with. But you don't necessarily have to do that. It's quicker because not everyone's going to connect with you. But I did it the free way because I was strapped for cash at the time. And sometimes I just had to wait for them to connect with me. Sometimes it took instantly. Sometimes it took a full day. Sometimes it took a full week or 2 weeks. But I kept tabs. And once they accepted my request to connect with them, I would email them, introduce myself, keep it very concise. Busy people don't have time to read an essay. Introduce myself, be very polite with it. Don't be asking for stuff, but just be honest. Compliment them, and then, ask for what you're after, which is simply a pick your brain session that lasts no more than 10 minutes max. And what you're doing here is you're being respectful of their time. You're complimenting them, maybe even flattering their ego, and their sense to be seen as a mentor or influencer. And you're basically asking them for the time of day, to learn about the industry and job title. And you're truly showcasing that, hey, there's no strings attached. I'm not trying to gonna harass you for a job or anything. I truly just want to, learn from someone I admire, learn from someone who has the job title or, is in the industry I want to get into. I really respect this. And the time limit also really showcases that you aren't trying to take too much from them. Anyone can do 5 or 10 minutes. If you ask for an hour-long thing, that's going to put a lot of breaks to the request. And from there, you're going to be, it's going to be a partial numbers game. I say partial because you don't want to shotgun and send out 100 of these. But you will have to send out more than one. Some people are just too busy and they will reject you for a variety of reasons. So maybe sending this out to 5 people a day or 10 people every 2 days or every week, that may be enough to get you started. And you get these people on the phone, in person if you can. In person is always best, but sometimes they can't in person. So you get them on the phone and you talk to them and you ask them real questions. You're not trying to use these questions as a fake way of getting a job or anything. You're networking with them so that they're aware of that you're a potential candidate, so that they can consider you in the back of their mind. But more importantly than that, you're truly getting a gauge for what you need to succeed at your job. Ask them how the job is like and so on and so forth, so that you can actually get a sense for whether this is something you're passionate about. And you'll be surprised. Some people, they do this and they find out a job that they always thought they wanted, in reality, isn't what they want. They find out what it's really like to work in the industry and it sucks. And that's a blessing. It's not a curse. It's not something bad. It's good because now you've just saved a bunch of time, a bunch of money, and now you don't have to apply for a job that, you waste a year or 2 years on only to find you hate it. And now you can move on to the thousands of other jobs out there and find something you're more passionate about. But that's one thing you should do. And then the second thing would be really to figure out what you're lacking. Micking is not a word. I was going to say missing, but I changed it to lacking. But find out what you're lacking, or find out if you're actually up to par or above standards. So this is a great way if you have low self-esteem or you have arrogance, to find out on a technical level, a purely technical hard skills level, what are you missing? And maybe it's not just a hard skills level. You can ask them from a soft skills and hard skills level. You've been in the industry, you know who gets accepted, and who doesn't. What am I missing? And because you're talking to real people, they'll be more honest than anything you'll ever get from a recruiter or interviewer. And they'll be like this: hey, you're not emotionally intelligent enough. But, if you took these extra classes, these workshops on the side, or you just, did a few volunteering internship experiences where you're talking and interacting with more people, maybe you can improve that. Or sometimes they'll be like, okay, from the hard skills side, the technical side, you have good Java skills and good C++ skills, but really the secret is that in our industry, it's all about Python. And that's what we're really looking for in a job. And, you don't have it. And sometimes they won't give you recommendations on how to fix that unless you ask. And sometimes they may not even have the right answers. So you have to find out yourself, but you've at least gotten clues to figure it out. And that's really the most important thing about this. You get real secrets about what they're looking for. And sometimes this is vastly different from what you expect. So for example, I did a whole stint where I was, interviewing, I wouldn't say hundreds, but I interviewed over 50 people in the social media marketing space, the advertising and online digital marketing space, just picking their brains. And what I found was shocking. I had all these assumptions because all the gurus online and experts for years now have been saying, oh, social media is a new hot thing. But what these real people in the industry were saying was that this is an extremely new field. The jobs are very sparse. It's highly competitive. The pay is not great. And most of the time, these companies have no idea what they want to even task you to do. It's super competitive. And the hardest part is getting your foot in the door. But after that, there really is no job growth or job opportunities or, opportunity for a raise. And I didn't really like that. I didn't like the truth behind it. And so I made a pivot and I decided I didn't want to be a social media manager despite what everyone was saying. Because despite what the gurus were saying, the actual people who worked in the industry, they were like, yeah, there's very few job opportunities, lots of competition for just uploading Facebook photos and, scheduling them. So that's very interesting. And, they also gave me all sorts of different tips about what people were looking for that I didn't even think they were interested in. So I interviewed and picked the brain of quite a few people in the marketing and, advertising and direct response and all industries and related industries. And when I first started, I assumed that, it's not about who you know. It's just about how skilled you are. And getting into the industry isn't too tough and stuff like that. And they completely blew it off. Like they were basically like, no, you're wrong. I thought that what mattered most was showing some level of results around how many, social media followers you grew yourself somehow, or some level of technical skills and mathematics skills. And they're like, no, we don't care about any of that. We really care about certifications. Are you Google Analytics certified? Are you Google AdWords certified? Do you have a HubSpot certification? Do you have this or that? And that really changed my mind. I was like, I had no idea that this crap mattered. So I started getting these certifications and making sure they were on my LinkedIn profile so that when people searched LinkedIn through its search engine algorithm, it would pick up my certifications. So that's just one tiny thing you could do that could drastically change your results. There's other things you can do too. When it comes to this, it's really just about picking their brains and asking the right questions and finding this stuff out. You may find that, more than, technical experience, years of experience matter. So some of them told me you have to go to networking events. You have to go to all these things and meet new people, because it's not about what you know. It's about who you know, especially when you're just trying to get your foot in the door. And they also told me that getting your foot in the door is the hardest part. And once you have 1 year of experience, the rest is smooth sailing, because once you have that experience, you can leverage off of that and grow even further, because that's what people hiring are looking for, years of experience. And then I would ask them, okay, well, I don't have any years of experience. How do I even get my foot in the door here? And they'll tell you oh, you have to go to these networking events. You have to, oh, did you know about this networking event? It's kind of a little underground. And I would hear about all these networking events and stuff that I never heard about before, even though I was searching online and I was up to date with all the big networking event sites like eventbrite.com and meetup.com. These are insider secrets that you only get from picking these other people's brains. And, one of the biggest tips was that, especially when you're starting out, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And the meritocracy, side of me, got enraged at first. I was frustrated. I was like, that's not fair. I worked so hard, I hustled, I got all these skills. Yeah, it's about who you know as well. But then after hearing it time and time again and hearing these people say, to be honest, it was because I knew this guy who knew this guy who got me the job. After hearing that a few times, not just a few, dozens of times, quite simply, I realized I got to stop whining and use this as an opportunity to grow my networking and social and soft skills to improve, so I knew more people. So, yeah, you have to have a positive attitude about this. You can't just, say something's unfair, because most of the time, 9 times out of 10, you have the opportunity to take that and grow from it and actually improve upon where you're lacking. So, yeah, I really recommend picking other people's brains. As you can tell, you can learn a lot about it and start improving that. And before you know it, you will get a job. It's also a fabulous way to identify new job titles and jobs that you never would have considered that you may be more passionate about, as well as identifying jobs that you thought you liked, but turns out you don't. Incredibly great thing in general. If you guys have any other questions or requests around getting your first job as a young professional in the modern world, let me know. I think I've covered most of the basics. And please stop by youre.com, sign up for my VIP email newsletter, because that's where I share my secrets that I share nowhere else to help you achieve the most happiness, wealth, fulfillment, excitement, pleasure. And that's all I gotta say. See you later. Peace.